I was going to tell you a story, but now I don't know. No, I'm going to tell you a story. It's about literature. This little calendar with the calendar on the front, obviously, and the plan of salvation on the back. Got the church telephone number, the church internet address. You don't know how valuable that is. Like, illustration. And I couldn't tell you now where I read this story, and in some paper somewhere the brethren put out. A preacher had moved into a congregation in West Missouri. He'd been there 7 years or so. Letter comes from the southern tip of Mexico, down next to Central America. And it referenced a particular tract, and it said on the back of this tract, you people advertised a correspondence course. I've read the tract. I want the correspondence course. Fellow had been there 7 years, had no idea. He started searching through all the records he could find, talked to the church secretary. She didn't know what it was talking about. Finally got one of the elders that had been there forever, and he said, yeah, we used that about 15 years ago. We did some mission work down along the Brownsville, Texas way. And they were over in Mexico doing that mission work. That tract took 15 years to get from there down to southern New Mexico. Now I've got tracts. I've got a paper box of tracts that I don't touch that much, but they're worn. I don't know how many hands that tract went through to get to the southern tip of Mexico, but it made the journey, took 15 years to get there. And this fellow writes and asks for that correspondence course. Well, of course, they sent it to him and then made preparations to go down there, and they established a congregation. Just simply saying, you don't know where this is going to go. By the way, I'll get something like this, and I'll mark a place in a book. And I'll put that book on my shelf. 5 years later, I'll pick that thing out, and I'll say, and it'll open up to where I put that calendar, and I said, well, when did I get that? Well, I had to have been at least 5 years ago because it's been 5 years. So people put those things in there, and somebody's going to find it, and somebody's going to read the back of that, and then they're going to say, well, wait a minute, and they're going to call the number, or they're going to go to the website, and think of all the info. If you've not been to the website, you should. You ought to see all the stuff that's there. A person could spend a long, long time reading that information, and even finally get around to making a phone call for follow-up. So, brethren, you don't know. You just don't know what that little calendar will do if we put it out there for people. And people, something like that, people don't throw away. They may pick it up, look at it, and put it back down. But somebody somewhere is going to come along and pick it up and say, well, I need a calendar, don't care about the back, and put it in their pocket and use it, and then they don't throw those things away. They're going to stick it in the book as a bookmark, or going to lay it down. Somebody's going to pick it up and look at that. There's no calculation of the value of that piece of information. All right. Story's over. This evening's lesson is entitled, The Church's Task, that the world is lost and the saved need to be working. The world is lost and the saved need to be working. Now, the text for this, John chapter 4, the first 42 verses, we're not going to read them all. Simply look at verses 39 through 42. This is the account of Jesus at the well in Sychar and talking to the woman of the Samaritan woman. Anyways, the passage I want us to look at, the woman leaves Jesus and goes back home. And many of the Samaritans of that city believed on him for the saying of the woman which testified, he told me all that I ever did. That's what she said. Now, she probably said some more things in there. But that's what we have record of her saying. So when the Samaritans were come unto him, they besought him that he would tarry with them, and he abode there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. They believed because of what he said. He didn't do any miracles. He talked to them. And said unto the woman, now we believe, not because of thy saying, for we have heard him ourselves, and know that this is indeed the Christ, the Savior of the world. They didn't see anything. They heard what he had to say. Now, we could sit down and study the Bible and find out the words of Christ, and we can do what Jesus did. Yeah, but he was Jesus. Yeah, but he still said stuff. He still said things. And we can do that also. But the purpose of the church as an institution is to demonstrate to the world God's manifold wisdom. Again, we've looked at Ephesians chapter 3, 10, and 11 a number of times this past week. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 10, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, that God hath before ordained that we should walk therein. Matthew 5, 13 through 16, we're the city on the hill, we're the salt and the light. And all that goes along with that. And our job is to live our lives in such a way that people see us and glorify God which is in heaven. Because they watch us live our lives. They see us. There are people. Had an instructor at School of Preaching, Clarence Lavender. You probably know him, brother. Okay. Instructor of mine at School of Preaching. Before he got into preaching full time, he was a mechanic for a Caterpillar dealer, as I recall. And he was working underneath it on one of the tracks, and he unloosed a piece of it, and the arm that he was unloosing swung out and hit him in the back of the leg and messed up the cartilage in his leg. Now, they knew he was a preacher. They gave him a coveralls that had preacher for the name, and Clarence is rolling on the ground in pain, calling for somebody to come help him. Well, somebody finally did, and one of the fellows said, you know, I knew you was in pain because I was laying on the other side of the track watching you. Well, why didn't you say something? He said, I wanted to see if you'd cuss. Now, what does that, now, once my fingers got unwrapped from his throat. But do you understand the point? People are watching you. They are seeing how you behave in every instance that they are able to observe you. And if you mess up one time, I knew it. I knew they couldn't do it. I knew it was a waste of their time. That's a pretty big burden that we carry. But we are to be that lighthouse on the shore that guides the lost and the weakened sailor on life's tempestuous sea to the safe harbor. We have a hymn for that. Let the lower lights be burning. Matthew 11, verse 28, Jesus said, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. That's the plea of Jesus. That's what we need to do. We need to be bringing people to Jesus, but they want to see him first. How can you live that way? Well, I'm a Christian. Went home for my 20th class reunion, standing around. Now, I didn't become a child of God until I was 24, almost 20. And so I was in the Navy for 4 years. And those of you in service, all that means. I was in the Navy for 4 years. Okay. And all that conjures in your mind. That's where I was. And I'm standing around with my high school friends, and they're saying, what are you doing, what are you doing, what are you doing? And they get to me, well, Hill, what are you doing now? Well, I'm a preacher. No, really, what are you doing now? No, I'm a preacher. And that was interesting. I had an interesting conversation. And they said, really, because we've seen you, buddy. Well, that's what I was. That's not what I am now. It's the task of the Christian to be God's instrument in accomplishing that end. We are the ones, as I said last night, we are the only ones qualified to bring people to Jesus. Nobody else is qualified. That to whom other folks bring people to is not the Jesus of the Bible. That's a whole series of lessons too. Again, Ephesians 2 and verse 10. We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus. Let's notice first of all the terrible consequences of being lost. And this is something that people, I'm convinced, don't think about, because I know I never did. And when I did, I tried not to. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 1. Talking to Ephesian brethren, he says, and you hath he quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins. That was their spiritual condition. They were dead, Ephesians 2 and verse 1. Now look down at verse 11 and 12. Wherefore remember that ye, being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision, and the flesh made by hands, that at that time, verse 12, ye were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope, and without God in the world. You know, when you have no hope, you die. I don't care your physical condition. I don't care how much food and water you've got with you. When you lose hope, you're going to die. There are people that have been, the doctors have come in and said, I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do for you. You've got about 6 months. And that was 5 years ago. We all know people like that lived long past their scheduled time to die because they said, I'm not ready to die. And they didn't die. Now, I don't understand all that. We could all tell stories about it. But there's terrible consequences. In Luke chapter 15, verses 2 turn to it, but Luke 15, 24 and 32, that account is of the prodigal son, and he's living in that hog pen, and he comes to himself. He says, I need to go back home. My servants are living better than I am. My father's servants are living better than I am. And he goes home, and his dad says, my son is home. He that once was lost is now found. He that once was dead is now alive. His father had written the boy off in at least one sense, a spiritual sense. He recognized his son was lost. But our sin, the things that we do, separate us from God, from the fountain of life. When we are separated from God, spiritually speaking, we have no hope. We are dead, spiritually speaking. In Isaiah 59, 1 and 2, behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither his ear heavy that it cannot hear. He still knows what's going on. But your iniquities have separated between God, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he will not hear. If you won't listen to him, why should he listen to you? We've all been children in that situation. We've all been parents with children in that situation. Until you do what I tell you to do, you get nothing. Why is it any different spiritually speaking? Well, God's a loving God. He's also a righteous God. And he has standards. Consider a spiritual description of the lost in Acts 26 and 18. Paul is recounting what Jesus said to him on the road to Damascus. He said, to open their eyes, they were blinded. To turn them from darkness to light, they didn't know where they were. And from the power of Satan unto God, they were under the power of Satan. That they may receive forgiveness of sins, they didn't have it. Inheritance among them which are sanctified, they were unsanctified. By faith it is in me. They didn't believe in Christ, they didn't care about it. That's who we're sent to. That's who you and I are sent to. We've got to go find these folks that are deaf, dumb, and blind. And I don't mean to incense anybody that has those physical maladies, but people are that way, spiritually speaking. And how do you get their attention? By just effort, I suppose. Now, while in that condition, should he die or Jesus return, he will face an eternal damnation separated from God. That's just what the Bible teaches. If Christ comes and I'm not in a condition, and I'm not in a sanctified condition, which we talked about last night, I have no hope. I stand condemned for an eternity at that point. You shouldn't tell people that. Listen, if they were caught in a house fire, what would you want me to do? Well, that's different. No, it's not. Their spiritual house is on fire. And we're standing on the curb saying, oh, well, maybe somebody will call 911. Brethren, we're the fire department. That's us. That's our job, is to go find those people. Now, at one point, I wanted to be a police officer. And I was perfectly willing to go chase somebody into a building with a gun in his hand. I don't understand how a fireman goes into a burning building. That's just the craziest thing in the world. But you talk to a fireman, and he said, well, listen, I'm just going in after a fire. You're going after somebody with a gun. And I thought about it and changed my mind. But these folks, again, before I believe that, we go look at 2 Thessalonians 1, 6 through 10. Those that know not God, obey not the gospel of Lord Jesus Christ. God's going to come in flaming fire with his mighty angels. He's going to take vengeance on those that know not God and that obey not the gospel of Lord Jesus Christ. I've had some serious people angry at me before. I've never had a vengeful God on my trail. And I don't know how you describe the terror of realizing that God is going to wreak vengeance on you. That's just beyond my calculation. I can't even figure that one out. But yet there are people that just don't care. I've visited somebody in a hospital and he said, I'm going to bust the gates of hell wide open. He had no idea. No idea. And at that point, what do you say? But these folks are blind and unable to fulfill their deepest need, which is salvation. Isaiah 5 and verse 5. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Isaiah 42 and 7. To open the blind eyes, to bring out the prisoners from the prison, and them that sit in darkness out of the prison house. Notice how God is describing these people from God's perspective. Isaiah 42 and 6, the prophet said, bring the blind by a way that they knew not, I will lead them in paths that they have not known. I will make darkness light before them and crooked things straight. These things will I do unto them and not forsake them. He's doing it through us. We are the tool. God will not come down and get a hold of those people and drag them kicking and screaming into the light. He doesn't work that way. It is our job to go to them and present the gospel in such a way that they may possibly hear it. But that's our job. Well, you say, preacher, I don't know what to say. Well, tell them what you did. Tell them why you did what you did. And the circumstances surrounding it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about testifying. So I'm just simply saying, tell them the facts of the case. My wife and I, when we got married, before we got married, we decided we were going to go to church. Now, I was not a church-going person. She said one Saturday night, I said, well, what are we doing tomorrow, hon? She said, I'm going to church. I said, well, come get me. I just wanted to be where she was. I didn't care where it was. And so we started attending church. We got married. We moved to Fort Lauderdale. We're driving down Andrews Avenue Boulevard, going to the real estate agent's house, and there is the Andrews Avenue Church of Christ on the corner of Andrews and Davie Boulevard. I said, there's a Church of Christ. Let's go there. Okay. 6 weeks later, I'm standing outside on the breezeway talking to a fellow by the name of Larry Miller. I took 2 years of speech and dramatics in high school, so that's where the drama comes from, I guess. I had no problem speaking in front of people. I said, Larry, how come nobody calls on me to lead in prayer? He said, well, Gene, it doesn't work that way. I said, well, what do I got to do? He said, you got to be a member of the church. Okay, got out my pencil. I said, where do I go and sign up? He doesn't work that way. Well, what do we do? You want to study the Bible? Sure, studied the Bible. Sister Renata Perrin and her sister, I can't remember Sister Perrin's sister's name, but they came to visit Jerry and I and set up the Bible study, and Bev and Steve Strange showed us the Joe Miller film strips, and we went through the John Hurt 8-lesson series, and we went through that and obeyed the gospel. And the fellow that, by the way, I went to Brother Yates before services that Sunday evening. I said, Dalton, my wife and I want to be baptized tonight after service. He said, congratulations, Gene, you ever thought about being a preacher? Just thought about being a Christian. But who knows what's going to work for the people you know? I mean, I don't know who you know. You know those folks. You know what's going to work. Nobody else does. You know like nobody else does. It may well be you getting them here to meet somebody else. I don't know. That's just a possibility. But they don't know their condition. In Acts 22 and verses 1 through 5, you don't have to turn to it, but Paul is standing before Jewish folks and the leaders of the Jews, and he said, men and brethren, he said, this is who I was. When I was Saul of Tarsus, these are the things that I did. And you can ask the high priest, because they gave me letters to go to Damascus and get these people. I was killing folks. I did it in all good conscience. I knew that what I was doing was what God wanted me to do. I knew it. And he said the same thing in Acts 26, 9 through 12. Until Jesus appeared unto him and said, well, no, you're not doing God's work. And Jesus straightened him out. He told him to go to Damascus. Nobody told him there. But these folks don't realize that their worldview is perverted. Everybody has a worldview. All a worldview is just your way of looking at reality and interpreting it in such a way that you can get through it with as little pain as possible. That's about as basic as I can make the explanation. I've got books about that thick on my shelf to explain stuff. In Matthew 6 and verse 23, Jesus says, but if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? Everybody has a light that they guide themselves by. Some folks have a dark light. That's a scary thought. Ephesians chapter 4, 18, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the light of God through the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart, who being past feeling, have given themselves over unto lasciviousness to work all uncleanness with greediness. You know, if people don't know any better, they don't do any better. They need to have their eyes opened up to what really is right. Well, who are you to judge me? Well, I'm not judging you. You've just judged me. That's a whole interesting conversation. So that's what we're facing, is trying to get to people, to get them to realize that they're in darkness and being guided by darkness. A skewed religion gives a darkened pathway. By the way, let me say this. Everybody has a religion. Everybody is religious. Now, their religion may be that God doesn't exist and they oppose God religiously, but they have a religion. And it guides their life. They form their life around that religious concept. And that's where worldview comes into play. John 12 and verse 35, Then Jesus said unto them, Yet a little while is the light with you. Walk while ye have the light, lest darkness come upon you. For he that walketh in darkness knoweth not whither he goeth. They don't know where they're going. I feel so sorry for people that don't believe in God. They have no idea. They're heading towards a bridge that is out, and they have no idea. And they're not listening to you shout, stop. So, what is the work of the church? Jesus told the apostles, All powers have been given unto me in heaven and earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always, even at the end of the world, or at the end of the age, depending on translation. That's our job. The apostles passed that on to us down through the ages, through the Scriptures. That's has devolved, or evolved, depending on how you want to look at it, to us. Our job, to go into all the world. Who is all the world? Well, stand in line at Walmart or Publix and stick your hand out. The 3-foot rule, I told you that the other night. Use that. And well, what do I say? A lot of weather we've been having lately. We've been having a gospel meeting over at our church. You ought to come. You don't know what this fellow's going to say next. Show up, bring them. Give them calendars. This little calendar. Take a couple with you. Hand it out to them. All that the church does and accomplishes, it does to the hands of individual members. Paul in 1 Corinthians 12, verse 14 and following, gives a list of the various body parts, the individual body parts, and how they relate to the body as a whole. How when all those come together, they make a functioning unit. Every member of the congregation has a responsibility. If nothing else, it's to the doors open up. It's easier to preach to a bunch of folks than just a handful of folks. And I've been in congregations that were a handful of folks. And so when a couple of people are gone on vacation, we're really down. When 10% of 25 is gone, you're missing a bunch of people. But everybody has a responsibility to do something in the congregation. Ephesians 4 and verse 16, Paul says, From whom the whole body fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplieth. Every joint supplieth, according to the effectual working, in the measure of every part, maketh increase of the body unto the edifying of itself in love. And I don't mean to give you an excuse not to do anything else than what you're doing, but if all you can do is show up and sit down, then brethren, we want you there sitting. We want you there. Because there are people that, as I said before, that are watching you. Where are you going? You've been gone every night this week. Well, I'm going to church. We have a gospel meeting. By the way, you need to come. Why don't you go with me? I'm fixing to leave here in a little bit. You've got about 30 minutes to get yourself ready to go and take them with you. And by the way, we're eating tonight too. We're having a meal. And you can watch the preacher eat. That's entertaining in itself. But the events of Acts chapter 6 and the appointing of servants to serve the widows demonstrates how the church accomplishes its ends. It finds people qualified to do the jobs that are necessary to be done and let them do the job. Here's your job, now go do it. And if you have to continually supervise somebody to do their job, you might need to find somebody else to do the job. But everybody can have something to do. And you need to be willing to do it. If somebody says, we need somebody to go do this, I'll go do it. And then go do it. And, well, I don't know, I've got this, that. Well, no, just go do it and come back and we'll go from there. Paul's assurance that judgment is individual, 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 10. We're all going to appear before the judgment seat of Christ as individuals, not to account for the things that we individually have, not somebody else, not everybody else, but just I'm going to account for Gene and how I've behaved. Every mission work supported by the church is done at the hands of an individual. Now there's Paul in Ephesus in Acts 19, and he finds certain disciples. Have you received the Holy Ghost? Don't even know if there is one. Unto what were you baptized? Baptism of John. He explained it to them. Started a congregation by himself. Could you do that? Somebody asks you a question, you ask them a question, they ask you a question, and you give them book, chapter, and verse in a kind way. You don't know what's going to happen. Consider the work of Jesus on this earth. He was the sacrificial lamb. Again, John 1:29. Behold the Lamb of God, take away the sins of the world. 1 Peter 1, verse 19, Peter says, "But with the precious Christ, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot, who verily was foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest for you." Jesus came to die for me and you. He was that sacrificial lamb. He came individually to seek and save the lost, Luke 19 and verse 10. That was his job. That's now our job, to seek and find the lost. He went about doing good. He was healing people. He was casting out demons, doing all kinds of things. Galatians 6 and verse 10, as ye have, that Paul said to the Galatian brethren, "As ye have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, the household of faith." Now, again, going back to the circle, big circle on the wall, that big circle represents all men. And you draw a smaller circle inside that big one, and that's the church, the household of faith. Now, we're to see that we can do good to everybody. We have the opportunity to whom to do good to, but yet we're to especially take care of the household of faith. We take care of the brethren first, and then we reach outside. But we're to reach outside. Who does that? I don't know who you know. I just don't. You know who you know. That's your field. That's your vineyard. That's where your work is. That's your garden. You go weed that garden. You go take care of those folks. And you don't have, I didn't like somebody beating me about the head and shoulders with the Bible. When I was in the service, on the board in Mount Whitney, I'm going aft. This other fellow by the name of Jim's coming forward. We came to a hatch, and those hatches, there's only one person at a time. He said, "Come on through, Hill." So yeah, "How you doing, Jim?" "Doing fine. Got something to say to you." "What's that?" Literally grabbed me by the front, pushed me up against the bulkhead and said, "You're going to hell if you don't repent." I knew that. That was no revelation. I didn't want him telling me that. At least not in that way. You had to know Jim Cooter. I mean, he was an individual unto himself. But it's the idea, and I don't recommend you do that. Now, you might have some friends that need that to just get your attention. But I'm saying there's something you can say. Just something you discussed at Bible class the other day. Listen to what they're telling you. And then bring and relate something that you heard in Bible. We were talking about that in Bible class the other day. And this is what the teacher said. "We found this in the Bible." "Well, I'm not interested in that." "Well, that's okay. You've ever taken a rubber band, a brand new rubber band, and stretched around something to hold it? Only left it there for a few minutes, and you pulled it off. And that rubber band, it started out that big, and when you got done with it, it wouldn't go back any smaller than that. You put a seed in somebody's mind, their mind expands to accept the seed. Even though they get rid of it, it doesn't go back to its original position. They've changed. You affected them by what you have said to them. "Well, I don't want to start a fight." Don't start a fight. Just plant a seed. Just plant a seed. Tell them something they need to hear with a scripture that answers the question. Jesus was focused, very focused, in his daily living. John 3 and verse 17, "For God sent his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved." That's what we do. That's our job. John 4 and verse 34, "Jesus saith unto them, My meat is to do the work of him that sent me, and to finish his work." We have a job to. If our Savior worked, how is it that we can just sit there comfortably, uninterested in stuff? I don't know. That's something we're going to have to answer for in the day of judgment, I'm sure. But the church is to reflect Jesus to the world as those that have put on Christ. In Acts 4 and verse 13, "Now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, the Sanhedrin, and perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant men, they marveled. And they took knowledge of them that they had been with Jesus." When people look at you, do they acknowledge that same thing, that you have been with Jesus? Something to think about. Examine yourselves. Now notice that a condemned Jew and a pagan Gentile recognized Jesus' righteousness. The one thief on the cross that just hours before had been berating Jesus says, "Lord, remember me when thou comest unto thy kingdom." Jesus said, "This day shalt thou be with me in paradise." After Jesus died and they had the physical stuff like that, the Roman centurion said, "This is truly the Son of God." Can we be any less? Galatians 2 and verse 20, I'm crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. Christ liveth in me. Yet the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. If Jesus gave himself for me, I can give me to him and be done with myself and reflect him in everything that I do. We are clothed in righteousness. We have that robe. Isaiah 61:10. I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be joyful in my God, for he hath clothed me with the garments of salvation. He hath covered me with the robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom decketh himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorneth herself with jewels. That's us. He has clothed us with glorious clothing. Now, you know, there are some brethren, when they come to Bible classes, they take off their worldly coat, they hang it over here on the peg, they take off their spiritual robe of righteousness and piety, they put it on, and they come in, and the way they talk and behave, you'd never know that they were living a double life. And then when they get done, they take off that spiritual robe and they hang it back on the hook. They put on their worldly clothes, they go back out into the world, and they start living however they choose to live. And unless you catch them in something, or unless you see them at jail, I've worked in jail, I've seen some people in jail, you don't know how they're living. And they call themselves Christians. This life as a Christian makes no provision for the flesh. We're just not allowed to be that way without consequences. Paul in Romans chapter 13 says, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. Now, I never said that was easy. Don't misunderstand me. I never said that was easy. Paul says in Galatians 5:16, this I say that walk in the Spirit, ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. If you're always doing what the Spirit tells you to do through study of the Scriptures, you'll never do a sin. Now, we don't always do what the Spirit tells us. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. John says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. And there's the key. Do you love the Lord more than you love the world, or the world more than you love the Lord? I know brethren are so unhappy. They've got one foot in the world and one foot in the church, and they know enough about righteousness to be just absolutely unhappy. And if they quit the church, well, they are basically already have, but if they actually formally broke ties with the church, they'd still be uncomfortable, which is a good thing. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. That's a long time. Paul says we are a new man. When we become Christians, we become a new person. There's a hymn, the land of beginning again. I think that's the phrase in it. Paul says in Ephesians 4:24 that you put on the new man which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. Are we righteous and truly holy? Not do I think I am, but am I? Have I met the standards of righteousness the Bible gives me? Well, the answer is no, because it is a matter of growth. Spiritual maturity. And have put on the new man, Colossians 3:10, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him. Renewed in knowledge. It's a daily ongoing battle that we must fight on a regular basis. Christians are to be a blessing in the lives of others. Christians are to be a blessing in the lives of others. For the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared unto all mankind, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lusts, we should live soberly, righteously, and God in this present world. If you just do that, you will be so far ahead of the game, it'll just be amazing. If you just do that, and that's a whole lot. Looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing of the great God and our Savior Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from all iniquity and purify unto himself a peculiar people, zealous of good works. That's who we are to be. Frequently we're not that, but that's who we are to be. Proper love is exhibited, which is the basis of all aspects of living. Love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, and soul. That's pretty much complete. There's nothing left out of that. A proper reverence for God is displayed. Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. Oh, how I love Jesus. But come Sunday evening worship services, you're not to be found. We're lucky to see you on Wednesday night. If you're here on Sunday morning with a Bible in your hand, go to Bible camp. And kids are sitting there in Bible class. Bible camp, Bible class. Paul, where's your Bible? It's at home. Where are you, son? A Bible camp. What are you sitting in? Bible class. What do you suppose you ought to have? Well, I don't know. And they're serious. And you want to call their parents up and say, do you realize your son's here without his Bible? Yeah, what's the matter with that? And the parents, you got to convert the parents. Okay, sorry, that's a whole other lesson. If you love me, keep my commandments. How do you do that? You just do what he says to do. You read the words and do what the words tell you to do. Just do what they say to do. Follow the instructions. Tab A, slot B. There you go. Now, there's more to it. I grant that. That's simplified, but still. There's a desire for the best for others. You know, in Matthew 25, 31 and following, you have the judgment scene. And the Lord has gathered all mankind, divided them right and left, sheep and the goats. And he says to the ones on his right-hand side, come unto rest prepared. When I was hungry and naked and so forth, you did all these things. Look, and notice what they said. This is surprising. It's amazing to me. Well, Lord, when did we see you naked and hungry and in prison and sick? And when? I don't remember seeing you there. When you did it to the least of my brethren, you did it unto me. Boy, there's a thought. There's a thought. Think about the sick people you know, those that are in need of one thing and another that you could supply. And you haven't supplied it. If that doesn't make sweat beat on your upper lip, I'm not sure what will. You mean I've got to go do something? Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. If Jesus meant what he said, I believe he did. Well, I don't know what to say. Well, just show up. They'll be glad to see you. I talked about this the other night. Just be there. Bring them a pot of soup. We had one lady that her potato soup. You were sick, you were going to get potato soup. It was good potato soup. I mean, it was good potato soup. You're going to get potato soup. That's what she did. And if she didn't show up, she was almost insulted. Why didn't you show up? But that's what you do. That's just what we do. I think of Dorcas. That lady was, when she passed away, the sisters were standing there with all the things that she had made for people that needed it. Again, Galatians 6 and verse 10, as you have therefore opportunity. A fervent, unfeigned love of the brethren, 1 Peter 1 and verse 22. Now there are some brethren that are really, really hard to love. I understand that. That just means we have to try really, really hard to love them. We have to really go out of our way to love them. We have a unique view of family life. Boy, if you want to get the feminists upset with this one, in Ephesians 5:21, husbands and wives are to submit to one another. But then if you go on down there, it's telling the women to submit to the husband. Well, I'm not going to submit to that man. Well, what'd you marry him for? Now, the problem is and on Facebook, I get into discussions with folks about, they'll be talking about how we're supposed to treat each other, and they'll get onto something about marriage life and raising children and stuff. And I'll get on there and I say, well, if a woman is a Proverbs 31:10 kind of a woman, the only man that's qualified to marry her is an Ephesians 5 kind of guy. And that sparks a discussion. It's generally always a good discussion. Why would a woman want to submit to a man that doesn't cherish her like he cherishes himself? Now, assuming the guy is reasonably mentally and emotionally healthy, he treats himself pretty good. Now, if he's got his head screwed on straight and all the threads are lined up, he's going to treat her just as well as he treats himself. Now, if a woman is thinking right, she's going to see that, and in a selfish kind of way, if he treats her better, she's going to treat him better, and that's a never-ending loop of improvement. Just saying. There's a thought for some folks, is women need to respect and love their husbands, and husbands need to cherish their wives. Get up and wash a set of dishes sometime. Now be careful when you do that. Honey, I washed the dishes. Plop as she hits the floor. I want my husband back. You're not my husband. Surprise him. I said from the pulpit one time that I washed dishes and changed diapers. I literally had some guy meet me in the foyer and said, what are you doing? I said, well, now what? You're up there talking about washing dishes and changing diapers. Yeah, I do that. You're trying to ruin it for us. Good. 2 words for you, brother. Repent. What? A unique view of family life. And we love our children. Well, I love being a dad. You know, my wife still won't let my son and I, Justin, go grocery shopping with her. We have too much fun. I love being a dad. And I don't get fathers they're not involved with their children. I don't understand that. That don't pay respect to their wives. I don't understand that. Why did you marry her? If you don't like her, why'd you marry her? I heard a preacher one time say, ladies, he may be an empty head, but he's still your head. What did you marry him for? What were you thinking? Okay, that's a whole other series of lessons. That's why I have a detailed outline, so I stay at least halfway on track. As we summarize this lesson, if anyone has any chance of obtaining the hope of heaven, it will be as a result of hearing and obeying the gospel. Nobody else has any hope. Nobody else has any hope. And even those that have obeyed the gospel need to be very, very careful, because that gate is straight and the way is narrow. And if you go back and study that passage from Matthew chapter 7 or 5, narrows the way. Anyways, it's in the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew. And you find it, tell me later. Few of those that find that gate are going to enter in. And I would even say that there's an implication that few of those that go through that gate and get on that road are going to make it to the end of that road, because they left the straight and narrow. That's a scary thing. That ought to get us back into the groove of studying and application. The only ones qualified to preach the gospel are faithful Christians, who are the only ones with any credibility to do so. If I'm not being faithful to my wife, how can I teach somebody how to go to heaven? Why would they listen to me? A big task for the 21st century church is to accept the fact that those outside the church are truly lost and stand condemned to an eternity in a devil's hell as punishment for sin, according to Matthew 25 and 41. Oh, I thought God was a loving God. He's also a righteous and just God. He's a merciful God. He's a long-suffering God. He is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to a knowledge. But yet there are some that will still be lost in spite of that. The faithful Christian will make room in his daily schedule to seek and save the lost. We just simply must do it. If you have to get out your planner and plan it, then pencil it in. Just if that's what you have to do, then do it. Well, what must I do to be saved? When the Philippian jailer came before Paul and Silas and said, Sirs, what must I do to be saved? They said, believe in the Lord Jesus. And then they spoke unto him the word of the Lord. The Lord said that we have to be taught. John 6, 44 and 45, they shall all be taught of God. So somebody has to be taught first what it is they are to believe. And part of that is believing. There's a bunch of things in there, but part of that is believing that Jesus is the Christ. For John 8 and verse 24, Jesus said, except you believe that I am He, you should die in your sins. So I have to be taught that Jesus is Christ. I have to believe that not just think, not feel, but I have to know that Jesus is the Christ. There's sufficient evidence for the open-minded and willing to study. Jesus likewise said, I must repent of my sins. Luke 13:3, I tell you, nay, except you repent, ye shall likewise perish. I have to turn away from all those things that are sinful, and I have to turn to those things that are righteous and engage in the righteous things. I have to do that. Let him that stole steal no more, Paul says in Ephesians 4, but rather work that which is honest with his hands, that he may have to give to others. Jesus said I have to confess him before men, Matthew 10:32 and 33. Except you confess me before men, I will not confess you before my heavenly Father. It's more than a mental it's more than a verbal affirmation. It's more than a mental affirmation. It is also a lifestyle affirmation. Does my life take on the shape of Jesus, if you will? Am I behaving as a Christian? If Jesus were standing here directing my path, would I be doing exactly what he said to do? And then Jesus said in Mark 16:16, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be damned. And notice in that passage where salvation appears in relationship to baptism. Belief and baptism. It appears after belief and baptism. So I'm going to believe and I'm going to be baptized if I expect to receive salvation. That's what Jesus said. Jesus also said in Revelation 2 and verse 10, be thou faithful unto death, and I'll give unto thee the crown of life. So if I'm faithful up to and including the point of my death, even though, now he was talking to the brethren there in the book of Revelation about their coming persecution and how they needed to remain steadfast. Now, I'm not really expecting persecution like they had, but should it ever arise, I hope I'm faithful enough to endure to the end, even if it means my own death. And there's been times when family members have been threatened, if you don't renounce the Lord, I'm going to kill your wife. Boy, that'd be a tough one. That would be a tough one. But if I'm going to go to heaven, I would have to say I still confess Jesus as my Lord, in spite of the consequences to me and my family. Now, I don't expect to face that, but I'm not going to say it's never going to happen. Have you done those things? Have you done what Jesus said to do? Read in your own Bibles what Jesus said to do, and do what Jesus said to do, and you'll get the consequences. He will add you to the church, Acts 2 and verse 47. The Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. It was the one prophesied by Isaiah. It was the one promised by Jesus. It was the one established with power in Acts chapter 2 when the Holy Spirit came. I'm a member of that church. All of us, as far as I know here, are a member of that church. If you're in the sound of my voice, you need to become a member of that church because it's only those that have been washed in the blood of the Lamb that are going to heaven. And all those washed in the blood of the Lamb, by the Lamb, have been added to the church. If you're not a child of God, become one. If you are, but you've been unfaithful, come back. If you need our prayers, let us know. But we invite you to come. All together we stand and sing.